Hello everyone and welcome back. So this is a big news, our first GentleWave case. So here's the case. You can see definitely calcified. There is a finding on the mesial root there. You can see the cracks that were causing this issue. And the big thing and why I'm posting this case, it's the first case that I've done with my GentleWave at the new office. So I have used it in the past, but if you guys do have any questions about it, I do want to do an AMA. So if you can go ahead and just drop any questions below, I'd really appreciate it. Like I said, I'll make a separate video on this topic. How we're going to start off this video is how we always started off, by removing the tooth out of the occlusion by using that big wheel burr. The benefit here is when you're building a platform, it's much easier to build a platform against a flat surface than one with cusps. So this is one of those cases where for sure it's getting a crown. There is some benefit to flattening it off, secondary to helping prevent fractures in the case as well, and that's because it makes it a lot easier to build a platform for the GentleWave. In this case here, I am not going to be doing the restorative, so I'm only removing the amalgam kind of over where my axis would be. You can see the IRM or Dical or something underneath there that was used as a direct pulp cap years and years and years ago. And as soon as we remove that, we expose the pulp. I tried to keep more in. I know people are asking for longer videos, which I don't know why you all are dental masochists like me, but I love each and every one of you. Starting the access here, and when you're accessing for GentleWave, you don't have to have truly straight line access. I do want to clarify that I am currently a key opinion leader for Son Endo. I have done very little speaking with them and not much else. I bought this with my own money. None of this is sponsored whatsoever. I have not gotten any money from them for this video, so just wanted to make some disclosures here before we get going here. So when you're doing the access, it's pretty much the same as any other case. You need to find the canals and open everything up. I'll get into a little bit more here at the end about what the GentleWave can do for you and what it cannot do for you. But the key thing is you need to find all the canals. The machine cannot drill through dentin. It can't miraculously find canals for you. So you have to at least be able to get rotary files about halfway down before you would start to even consider running the GentleWave. And that's what we're doing here. As you saw from the preoperative image, this tooth was definitely on the calcified side, and it takes a little bit more time to work down these. So what we're doing here is trying to get into anything. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I usually use a combination of C-files plus rotaries plus some form of irrigation to kind of clean this out. The irrigation here is pretty limited, as you can see, because most of the time when I use the GentleWave, and I have used it for about 1.5 years at a different office, when I was using it on cases like this, I would use the GentleWave more as a instrumenting device rather than a disinfecting device. And that is something that is kind of anathema to a lot of people, but if I'm going to use the GentleWave on a case, I don't think I need to take rotary files more than about halfway down just to get space for the cannula for my beta instrument to do the obturation, because the machine does such a good job at cleaning out these very small sizes. You don't need to over prepare the teeth. Now, you still need to get down a little bit here. I mean, I could probably run the machine right now and it would open up and make it a little bit easier to clean out these canals, but from what I've learned from my mentors and talking to some of the higher ups at Son Endo, you do need to make the machine's job a little bit easier. So especially on vital cases, it is useful to go in and at least run a couple rotary files through to remove the vital tooth structure or vital, whatever's inside there. And that's actually an interesting thing with GentleWave. All the failures that I have with GentleWave, which was very minimal when I was working at the other office, were either vital cases or cases that ended up having cysts and needing surgery. So the necrotic cases, the ones that historically for us have been an issue, actually did great. The machine loves necrotic cases because there's not much to clean out compared to vital cases. For a vital case, you have to remove all of the vital tissue plus anything else remaining bacteria-wise, and I think that's why it's a little harder for the GentleWave to do that. So what we're doing here is chasing MB2, because that's most of what my job is going after that MB2. Once again, find MB2. If you want to pay off your student loans, find a way, figure out how to find MB2. That right there will take care of everything you need to do. This is by far the number one tooth that I have to treat is maxillary first molars, and MB2, based on the Suter study, which I have not posted those results yet, but we are still at 100% for presence of MB2. Pretty much what we're doing here is working it up. Now, some of you who are GentleWave users may have said at this point, wow, I just really screwed up the word users right there. Some of you who are GentleWave users, I'm doing this on my day off, so it's, It's almost 1 o'clock. I haven't had lunch. I'm just trying to get some content out for you guys. This is what I do on my day off, is come into the office and make videos for all of you. I'm insane. Anyway, what some of the GentleWave users might be saying right now is, why don't you start to run a cycle? And that actually is where my head was going right now, is you can use, there's pretty much only 2 instruments, hand pieces is what they call them, that you can use. You either have the clean flow, which works really nicely, it's not as aggressive, or you have the traditional 3-piece or molar hand piece. Those are a little more aggressive, and you have to be careful in a couple certain circumstances. I'm doing great today. This is going to be one of my best videos of all time, y'all. I'm really hoping to get some sponsorship out of this, obviously, and I'm doing a terrible job at it. Anyway, you can run the machine, stop it halfway through, and because you still have a hole to look through, you can re-access, go back inside there, and actually instrument if you're having difficulties with it. And I've done this multiple times in other cases. So that's kind of where my mind was going here. I'm at least 10 minutes in, maybe at this point. I know it's only 6 on the video, but I'm a fair amount in. Actually, probably less than that. It doesn't matter. I'm at the point where I'm considering, okay, why don't I start to run a procedure, see if I can't get something to clean out inside there. But the problem is you need at least something for the machine to work on. So I'm getting like a little stick, but that's not enough. You need to have at least a little bit of flaring, a little bit of, the canal for the machine to actually work. And that's what I'm doing here, kind of using that EG3, is starting to trough down the MB2, open everything up. Now, there are cases where you can't find anything, and I've seen some really cool ones where the gutta percha, or in most cases the BC sealer, actually comes up the type 2 canal, which is pretty cool. But in this case, it's early on in the appointment. I haven't really been working that long. I think it's worth it to take a little extra time, open up those extra canals, and work through it. So that's what I'm doing. If you've watched my channel before, you've seen a lot of videos on how I handle this, but in general, it's going to be a combination of the EG3 to kind of do the light troughing. I'll use the workhorse, or the 850-012, over the top of it to create kind of a flat spot so that my C files don't go into where the EG3 is, and that's where I do most of my work here. Now, it seems like I'm doing a lot right now. It really isn't. This is really gentle feathering. You do not want to be pressing apically. I'm more pressing laterally with all of these, and just slowly working down, literally less than 1/10 of a millimeter at a time. And after you use that file, dry everything. I did take out some of the rinsing and drying, but in general, I'll be rinsing after files with usually EDTA, because it helps chelate the calcium and kind of makes it a little bit easier to see. And then I'll be drying, usually with the air only strop co, to ensure that everything is nice and clean inside there as well. And that's pretty much the process. So I know this does seem tedious, but it is important to find these extra canals, and the word extra implies that they're not almost always there, and so far we're at 100% based on my study that's been going on now for 4 months. So I will probably present that in the next few weeks as far as the November cases, but we are still at 100% for MB2s, and I will very much be excited when we finally have one that's not. They do exist, I promise, they do exist, but the number of how common they are is way higher than most of the reported literature, because they use non-clinical studies, because you can't always drill into people. Anyway, as far as what we're doing here, in my mind, I'm starting to think, okay, we've done a lot of work. I'm not really getting into anything here. Is it about time to start running the GentleWave? The other 3 canals look great here. MB1, DB, palatal are all ready to go, ready to kind of be, cleaned by the machine, but we still have that MB2, and this is where you have to kind of make your own judgment call here of when do you stop. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't really taken rotary files down the other canals. I haven't gotten working length. I haven't done a lot of the things that I would normally do here, and that's because the machine does pretty much all of it for me. You're asking, Scott, how on earth is it doing working length? It doesn't. I get a rough working length off of the cone beam, and it's going to be within 1 millimeter or 2. But for the square technique, that's all you need. You'll see at the end of the video, I recapitulate with a 15 and a 20K file to ensure that we're patent down to my estimated. And that's all you really need to do. This combination, the GentleWave plus the coneless squirt technique, is a 1-2 punch that really is going to redefine endodontics. John Cotomy is a mentor of mine, a good friend of mine. He describes this as Gen 3 of endodontics, of where we're going in the future, of minimally instrumentation, pretty much. And you don't need to clean using rotary files all the way to the apex if the machine's going to do it for you. Then the question comes, how do you obturate that? Well, in some cases, people will, go back and instrument after, but if you learn how to use the squirt technique, you don't have to. So that's the cool thing here. Many will notice I finally dropped down the MB2. This is a type 2 system you'll see in the final, and I was finally able to drop down. Estimated on this one was 21. I'm going down probably about 16, 15, give or take. Don't need to do more. Let's talk about building platforms. The first thing you need to do is get this thing super, super dry. So at this point, I am done with rotary files. The first thing you need to do is use isopropyl alcohol, scrub the crap out of it, and get ready to build a platform. Get everything nice and dry, because we're going to use something called Sound Seal to create said platform. Now, before we talk about creating platforms, I want to go over a few things. What the GentleWave cannot do and what it can do. So for sure, what it can't do, it cannot access the tooth for you. You still need to drill a hole. We still need a dentist. It cannot find the canals for you. You still need to find them and open up at least a little bit of them. Now, what it can do is the reason why I bought it. It was very expensive, but very much worth it. Number one, it cleans things so well. This is definitely better than a laser. It will help a ton with your draining cases as well. Those cases that come in with swelling in the you see that they're swollen, that there's huge amounts of infection inside the bone, or that the sinus is actually really infected. These will help with those as well. And then the other thing we talked about a little bit is this can help you negotiate down calcified canals. What happens is as the system is running, it's going to be removing a lot of the debris that would normally bind your files. And by getting that out of the way, it becomes much, much easier to drop down to your working length. And that's really one of the major benefits of this case. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and talk about how we build that platform. So building platforms on its own is a multiple hour lecture from Sonendo, but we're going to be using something here called Sound Seal. It is similar to a blockout resin used to make bleaching trays. It's a little stickier than the stuff that I've used, that you've seen me use in previous videos, and it is almost soft. Like, it has a almost like rubbery consistency to it, which makes it very easy to manipulate. The first thing you want to do is go around the outside along the margins down by the rubber dam, and then you want to create a flat surface on top. Now, we're going to light cure here. I'll leave it in. I'm going to do the full 20 seconds. You want to buy a light curing unit that is very rapid. So probably the best one right now is by Woodpecker. I have a different one right now, which does a fair job. But you want something quick because you're going to be curing a lot as you're building up these platforms. This right here is the matrix. So it's kind of like frosting a cake or a cupcake where you just go around the outside. It is important to go all the way to the edge of the little platform former, I guess is what they're technically calling it. You can tell I'm a very good employee. Not employee at all. And what you want to do here, that extra little lip there is something they added recently, and it creates this very, very stable platform that you can grab onto, and it makes it a lot easier. So make sure you go all the way out to the exterior of it. One thing I didn't do here, I should have used a different rubber dam clamp. I'm going to be probably buying a few extra ones. I'm sorry I didn't adjust the microscope here, but what you want to do is use the Glickman instrument to go along the side and make sure that the sound seal that you have on there adheres to the existing one. And then one other mistake I made, I like to use the Endophile forceps here. It makes it so much easier to hold this in place, but I forgot to unlock them beforehand. Sometimes the process of unlocking can be kind of violent, and that can pop it off. So thankfully I was able to get this off without too many issues there. You can see me using two hands to make sure it's gentle. Then what you want to do is take your Endo Explorer to loosen the former from the actual sound seal itself. And you have to go back and light cure this again because there is some air inhibited layers, and that can kind of mess with the GentleWave process. So you want to make sure, this is why having that fast light cure is important. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and run our fit test here. I can make a totally separate video on ergonomics from GentleWave because when you have to hold this thing for 8 minutes, static holding can become very painful really quickly. One thing I do is use my left hand for this. I'm right-handed, so by using the left hand, it makes it so I'm not putting as much stress on that, on my normal working hand. And you'll see me constantly checking with the mirror. Now, I did cut out, I know a lot of you masochists want to have the long video. I'm not going to show a video of just the GentleWave machine running like this for 8 minutes. But one thing I am always doing is I still have the mirror in my hand and I'm always checking. What I'm checking is to make sure that stream through the little viewing window there is nice and solid. In this case, it wasn't. And so we're going to go back and readjust here. There is a sound component here. I should have recorded the sound. I'm sorry about that, but you can see right there as it goes from having the bubbles to being nice and clear. That's what you want. You want it to be nice and solid, and it makes almost this like jet stream sound. So the whole time, every couple of minutes or so, or 30 seconds, I would say, I'm checking with the mirror to make sure there's no leakage, especially during the bleach cycle, because you don't want the patient to be tasting that. EDTA and water, they're really not going to have many issues with.
A few moments later.
After about a few minutes, we're going to come back and finish it up. So it'll give you that 15-second warning that, hey, we're doing the final rinse here. And at this point, we're ready to obturate the case. So one of the cool things here, you just pop that off. It comes off really easily. Dry the canals here. I'm going to use a combination of the microsuction on my ASI cart as well as paper points. And you'll notice if you've ever seen a GentleWave case before, especially if you've done one, if you over instrument, you're going to get bleeding. That's just one of the things. The clean flow device seems to do a much better job of lowering the incidence of bleeding compared to the 3-piece. And especially if you do it like this, where you're not getting those rotary files down to the apex, it makes it very, very easy to get dry. Having used this machine for a long time, now having it in my own office, the number of times I have issues with bleeding is very, very low. So what I'm doing here, I've placed the sealer using the sealer's AH Plus in this case, using the paper points, and now we're going to recapitulate. And you'll see me, this is where I'm going to do a little bit more work than I've had to in the past, and that's because I want to make sure that the K file, the 20K file in this case, goes to length. Sometimes you'll have to use a smaller one and work it up a little bit here, but with the obturation technique that I like to use with the squirt fill, it is incredibly important to make sure that you have a nice glide path for that gutta percha to go all the way to the apex. So this is one difference compared to my other videos, is I'm going to be doing a little bit more work here to ensure that all of them are patent all the way to the apex. That's why I included this. Normally this is something I skip over, but just to give you an idea, it is more important here. And with the squirt fill here, it's pretty much as normal. I'm going to be using the beta, backfilling up until I feel that pressure, coming back in with the 35 end of the BNL Nitai plugger to create that pressure, and then pretty much doing that for every single canal. Now, a lot of you wanted a longer video, so here you go. Here's the squirt technique in extensive form. When you're doing this, I've actually found that the GentleWave cases that I use the squirt technique on, they tend to look better on the obturation, and I think it's because there's nothing left inside the canals. And that's something that the GentleWave offers that really no other competing device offers right now. There are a few things on the horizon that I'm excited about that I probably cannot talk about, so I'm not going to, but there are some things that are coming out from some competing companies that do seem interesting. But right now, as far as cleaning the inside of the teeth, there's really nothing that can hold a candle to what the GentleWave can do. Now, is it necessary in every case? Probably not, but in certain cases like this, not sure if you noticed, but there was some drainage when I first gained access down the mesial. And the smell, with the smell plus the drainage plus the history of pain in this patient, historically, this would have been a 2-step case for me. The thing that the GentleWave does, which is so cool, is it gives me the confidence to finish these cases in a single visit. If right now your practice is primarily single visit, I don't necessarily know if the GentleWave is going to be doing that much for you. If you're like me, and you probably had about 50% of the cases that were 2-step or beyond that, this is a very nice tool that you can add to it. And that's one of the reasons I actually bought the machine. I went back and looked through all the cases I did in October, and probably 25% of them I could have done in a single visit with it, and close to 2/3 could have benefited from it. So that was a higher number than I anticipated, and that was one of the reasons I decided to go ahead and buy the machine itself. Now, when you do use the GentleWave with this type of obturation process, I do recommend using the PacMac here because the PacMac helps make sure everything is nice and condensed. This is one where it's so skinny, I'm not worried about extrusion of material. You'll see in the final x-ray, there's barely a puff on these things. It's not like we're sending stuff out the apex. And you have to be careful in larger sizes, but because I kept the instrumentation to really the coronal third, I'm not worried about sending stuff out the apex. But you do, if you are going to learn this technique, and I recommend that everybody does, especially if you're a new dentist, with a PacMac, you do have to go back in because you're going to have a void. That's just how this kind of comes down to it. So here's kind of what the finish looks like. We're finishing up, just kind of getting everything nice and pretty. Normally I don't like to post many cases where I don't do the restorative because I do think the endodontist should be doing most of the restorative instead of the general dentist. But because this was my first GentleWave case, the rep was here. I told him I recorded, and I'm very excited to show the results. So here's what it looks on the inside. You can see that MB2 adding to my 100% rate, and you can almost see along the isthmus there that extra canal, and that's one of the cool things this does. But look at that obturation. It is really nice and solid. Look at the curve that you see on the MB2 as it joins up in there. It's a really nice device for this sort of thing, and like I said, you're not overfilling. A small little puff on the palatal, I'll take that all day long. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you all. Please, 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 if you have any questions about this, drop them as a comment below. I'll answer right away, but I know this is a new machine, a new technique that has only been out here for, gosh, I think I learned about it when I was still in residency, but it didn't really come to fruition for a while after that. And I think it's going to really help change how endodontics is performed. So please ask any questions you guys have. If you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them down as well. I'll answer anything. If you want to talk about wine or cars and racing, I'm happy to answer any of those questions as well. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm still astounded that there's this many people who actually want to hear me talk week in and week out, and this is the only reason that I'm making these videos, because I want to help advance endodontics as much as possible. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you all next time.